They took her when she was only 15. No one knew her name anymore. To them, she was only Subject 9, a number in a dark file. She did not remember how many nights had passed since the first time they locked her in that cold room. The white lights above never went off. People in black coats never spoke kindly. They only asked questions, gave commands, and wrote notes while she screamed. They wanted to break her. But they never understood what they were really creating at first. She was afraid of everything. The sound of metal doors. The burning smell when they put strange liquids into her veins. The heavy machines humming around her, recording every heartbeat, every breath. Sometimes she thought she would die, and sometimes she wished she could. But they never let her die. Every time she fainted, they brought her back. Every time her body gave up, they forced it awake again. She did not know why they chose her. She was just a girl from a forgotten place, someone who should have lived a normal life. But to them she was more than that. They said her blood was different, he said. Her mind could reach where others could not. And so they tested her, again and again, searching for the limit. The first time it happened, she thought she was losing her mind. They had placed her in a glass chamber filled with gas. Her chest burned, her eyes watered. The scientists were watching from the other side, waiting for her to fall. But something inside her changed. She felt the air moving, not just around. Her butt through her. She raised her hands against the glass without thinking, and the gas pulled away from her lungs like it feared her. The room cleared. And for the first time, scientists looked afraid. They tried harder after that. Electricity, heat, cold, darkness, machines that whispered into her head. But the more they pushed, the more she grew. Every experiment that should have broken her only shaped her into something new. She began to hear their thoughts when they stood too close. She could feel their fear when they wrote their notes. And when she closed her eyes, she saw flashes of their secrets' faces, codes, and hidden doors inside the facility. They whispered to each other when they thought she could not hear. She is changing too fast. She is not supposed to survive. This long, if she learns control, we cannot contain her. But it was already too late. One night they chained her to a chair with steel cuffs. They wanted to test her pain threshold again. Wires pressed into her skin, carrying sharp waves of electricity. Her body trembled, her teeth clenched. For hours they tried to make her scream, but she did not scream. She only stared at them with cold, empty eyes. And in that moment, something shifted in the room. The lights flickered. The air grew heavy. Scientists froze as they felt something crawling into their minds. She was not just hearing their thoughts now. She was inside them. Their fears, their regrets, their nightmares, she could see them all. And she smiled, not because she wanted to, but because their terror was feeding something deep inside her. The next morning, 3 scientists resigned. 1 never came back. The rest kept their distance, but the experiments did not stop. They could have not stop. Orders came from higher above. Someone far away was watching her progress, demanding results. She began to understand her power, little by little. At night, when the facility was quiet, she practiced in secret. She learned how to move objects without touching them, how to make the cameras turn away, how to silence the footsteps of the guards outside. They thought she was still weak, still afraid, but she was waiting for the right time. In her mind, she no longer called herself Subject 9. That was their name for her. She was something else now, something stronger, darker. She did not know the word for it, but she could feel it growing inside her. The scientists wanted a weapon. Instead, they had created the very thing they feared. One evening, a young assistant entered her room with food. He was nervous, his hand shaking as he placed the tray on the floor. He whispered under his breath, "I'm sorry." She looked at him closely, into his eyes, and for a moment she saw something different: pity, a spark of humanity. But then she also saw his memories. She saw how he watched as they hurt her, how he turned away but never stopped them. She saw his guilt, but also his weakness. It was just like the rest of them. She spoke for the first time in days, her voice low, almost a whisper. "You are afraid of me." The assistant froze. His mouth opened, but no words came out. She leaned closer, the cuffs around her wrists clinking softly, her eyes locked on his, unblinking. You should be. The tray slipped from his hands, crashing onto the floor. He ran out without looking back. The door slammed shut. And in the silence, she smiled again. They thought they were in control. But fear had already begun to spread. Not just in the assistant, not just in the scientists, but in everyone inside. Those walls, and she was learning how to use it. The next days inside the facility were not the same. Something had changed, though no one spoke about it openly. Guards walked faster in the halls. Scientists whispered when they passed each other, keeping their eyes low. Even the cameras that watched her every second seemed to tilt away, as if the machines themselves feared her. She sat quietly in her room most of the time. They still brought her food, still gave her injections, still connected her to their machines. But now, she watched them more carefully than ever. She could hear their thoughts when they came too close. Fear, suspicion, and doubt, those feelings, grew stronger each day, and she was feeding on them. When the lights flickered late at night, she no longer felt scared. She could sense the electricity moving through the wires in the walls. Sometimes she made the lights dim just to remind herself. She could. Sometimes, she let the cameras catch only shadows instead of her real figure. She enjoyed the confusion on the scientists' faces the next morning when they checked the recordings. One man in particular stood out. His name was Dr. Halvik. He never showed fear. His face was always calm, his eyes sharp. He was the one who gave the hardest orders, the one who never looked away when they tested her. She hated him more than the others, and yet she knew he was different. His thoughts were not so easy to enter. There was a wall in his mind, a cold steel barrier she could not yet break. He called her Subject 9, just like the rest. But when he spoke, it was as if he was talking to something less than human. It instead of she. The specimen. Instead of the girl, each word cut into her like a blade. But she did not show it. She sat still, eyes cold, waiting for the day she could make him afraid too. One night, she heard shouting from the other side of the walls. A guard had collapsed during his shift. The story spread quickly through the facility. His heart had stopped without warning. No reason, no sickness, no wound. He had simply fallen to the floor, eyes wide with terror. Some said he saw something. Before he died, something that wasn't there. But she knew the truth. She had reached into his mind when he passed near her room. She had pressed on his fear harder and harder until his own terror crushed him. She had not meant to kill him, but she did not feel sorry. Instead, she felt powerful. For the first time, she understood. Fear was not just a feeling. It was a weapon. The next morning, Dr. Halvik arrived with more guards than usual. He looked at her through the glass wall and spoke in a voice colder than ever. You are becoming dangerous. We will increase control measures. If you resist, you will suffer. She stared back without blinking. Sighed. She whispered to herself, No, it is you who will suffer. That same night, she began to test her reach. From her bed, she closed her eyes and stretched her thoughts outward. She felt the footsteps of guards in the hallway. She touched the mind of one as he walked past her door. He was tired, his back aching, his stomach empty. She made him believe. He heard someone whispering his name in the dark, turned quickly, heart racing, but no one was there. The next guard felt a sudden chill, as if someone breathed down his neck. He gripped his gun tightly, sweating. She smiled in her bed, unseen. Each night, she pushed further, planting small seeds of fear in the people around her. And each day, the facility grew quieter, more tense. Guards argued, scientists avoided. Certain corridors, whispers spread like smoke. Something unseen was stalking them, and none of them dared to say it aloud. But Dr. Halvik still did not bend. He walked straight into her room one evening, carrying a black case. He opened it slowly, revealing a crown of silver needles. This will map your mind, he said flatly. It will show us where your abilities come from. 2 guards held her down while Halvik placed the crown on her head. The needles burned as they pressed against her skin. A machine behind him began to hum. She felt something pulling at her thoughts, dragging them out into the open. For the first time, she felt weak again. Her head pounded, her vision blurred. Memories poured out her childhood, her screams, the faces of the scientists. She tried to resist, but the machine pulled harder. Halvik leaned closer, watching the readings. Yes, we will find the source now. You are not a god, you are only a subject. His words cut deep. But in that moment of pain, something inside her snapped. She no longer resisted. Instead, she pushed back, not with her body, but with her mind. She sent a wave of terror crashing into the two guards. Their hands trembled, their eyes widened. They dropped her and stumbled back, whispering prayers. Then she turned her focus to Halvik. For the first time, she felt a crack in his steel wall. Just a tiny opening, but enough. She reached in and showed him something, a vision of himself, alone in darkness, hunted by shadows. His breath caught. His eyes flickered just for a second, and she saw it. Fear, it was small, hidden deep, but it was real. She whispered through clenched teeth, "You are afraid too." Halvik froze. His jaw tightened, his calm mask breaking for the briefest moment. Then he ripped the crown from her head and shouted for the guards. They dragged her back to the bed, chains clamping onto her wrists and ankles. The machine shut down, its hum fading, but she was not the same anymore. She had touched the fear inside Halvik, and now she knew wall was unbreakable. The room grew silent again. The guards looked shaken. Halvik straightened his coat and walked out without another word. But she could still taste it, the sharp, bitter taste of his hidden fear, and she promised herself she would tear it wide open. Days passed after the crown experiment, but the memory of Halvik's fear stayed with her. It was only a flicker, only for a second, but it was enough. She had seen behind the mask he wore. He was not untouchable. No, he was human, like the rest of them. And humans could break. The facility tried to act normal again. The injections continued. The questions continued. The cameras watched her day and night. But now every person who entered her room moved with unease. Their hands shook when they wrote notes. Their eyes darted toward the corners, as if something might crawl out of the shadows. They were not wrong. Something was crawling in the shadows. It was her at night. When she closed her eyes, she no longer felt only the guards in the hall. She felt the entire building, every breath, every thought, every pulse of fear. The facility was alive to her, a giant web of minds, and she was sitting at the center. One evening, the young assistant returned with her food. His eyes avoided hers, but his mind betrayed him. She slipped inside it easily, like stepping into a weak doorway. He thought of his family, his little sister waiting at home, the money he earned here that paid for her medicine. She almost felt pity, but then she felt his fear too. He had nightmares about her every night. He dreamed of her breaking the glass, walking toward him with eyes like fire. He dreamed of her whispering his name in the dark. He was terrified of her, and that fear tasted better than pity. She leaned forward and whispered softly, "You dream about me?" The assistant froze. His tray clattered against the floor. His face turned pale as he backed away, shaking his head. "No," he muttered, before running from the room. She laughed quietly. It was the first time she had laughed in years. The next day, there were rumors. A scientist said the assistant refused to return to work. Guards said he had been found screaming in his sleep, begging to be released from the facility. She listened. From her room, smiling, fear was spreading faster now. Dr. Halvik, however, did not smile. He ordered stronger restraints, double guards at her door, and more tests. He walked into her room one morning, his hands behind his back, his eyes as cold as ice. "You think you are powerful," he said, "but power without control is only chaos. You will destroy yourself before you destroy us." She tilted her head, studying him. His words sounded strong, but she could feel the tension beneath them. His heartbeat was too quick. His jaw was too tight. He was trying to convince himself as much as her. "You are afraid of me," she whispered. His face hardened. "No, I am afraid of what will happen if you are not contained." But she smiled, 'Cause she knew. That night, something unusual happened. The power in the facility flickered. The lights dimmed for a few seconds, and when they returned, an alarm echoed through the halls. Guards ran past her door. Scientists shouted orders. For the first time since her capture, chaos had entered the walls of the place that had controlled her life. She closed her eyes and reached out with her mind. She touched the fear of the guards as they searched for the problem. She touched the panic of a scientist as he feared losing his data. She reached further, deeper, until she found the source. A generator had failed in the lower levels. Sparks burned. The metal groaned. Fear spread like fire, and she drank it all in, the air in. Her room grew heavy. The lights above her bed flickered again, but this time it was not the generator. It was her. She raised her hand slowly, and the metal tray from earlier lifted from the floor. It floated, trembling in the air, before slamming against the wall. With a crash, the guards outside her door jumped. One shouted, "What was that?" Another muttered, "She's doing it again." She smiled. They could feel it. Now the walls closing in, the shadows watching. The god of fear they had created growing stronger each second. Later that night, Dr. Halvik returned. His eyes scanned the broken tray on the floor. He studied her, his face. Unreadable. "You are learning too fast," he said quietly. "If this continues, there will be no controlling you. Perhaps ending you is the only option." Her chains rattled as she leaned forward, eyes burning into his. "It cannot end." "Me," she whispered. "You belong to me now. All of you do." For the first time, Halvik did not answer. He turned sharply and left the room, his coat whipping behind him, but she had seen it. In his eyes, in his heartbeat, in the way his hand trembled as he closed the door, he was afraid. Truly afraid. And she knew this was only the beginning. The fear inside the facility was no longer hidden. It showed in every step, every whisper, every nervous glance. The guards now kept their rifles close, not just for protection, but for comfort. The scientists spoke less and wrote more, as if silence could keep her from entering their minds. Even the air felt heavy, carrying tension that never left. But she was calm. She sat in her room, chained, her eyes half closed, listening to the storm of fear around her. It was her music, and every day the sound grew louder. Dr. Halvik tried to act as if nothing had changed. He still arrived at the same time, still spoke with his sharp, cold voice, still gave orders. But she could see through him now. His mask cracked more each time he stood in front of her. His heartbeat betrayed him. His thoughts, though still guarded, were trembling at the edges. One night she reached further than before. She spread her mind across the walls, through the metal doors, down the corridors, and into the rooms where the scientists worked. She listened. She heard them argue. One wanted her destroyed. Another wanted her preserved at all costs. A third whispered that she was already too strong, that they were playing with something they could not control. Their fear filled her like fire in her veins. But then she found something else, a thought not meant for her, secret. There was a higher level above Dr. Halvik, someone beyond the facility, someone who gave the orders, someone who demanded. The experiments continue no matter the risk. She did not know his name, but she saw glimpses in the scientists' minds. A man in a dark suit, watching her progress from far away, waiting for the weapon she was becoming. She whispered to herself in the darkness, "I am not your weapon. I am your fear." The next day they brought a new machine into her room. It was large, covered in wires and metal plates, with a glass pod at its center. Halvik explained in his usual calm tone. "This will not just measure you," he said. "It will contain you. If you resist, the machine will break your mind piece by piece until nothing remains." The guards pushed her into the pod. The glass closed around her. The air felt thin, pressing against her chest. She could feel the hum of the machine in her bones. At first it was quiet. Then the pressure began. Her head throbbed. Her vision blurred. Voices screamed in her mind, but they were not hers. They were fragments, echoes, twisted shapes that tried to drown her. She felt her strength slipping, her power bending under the weight of the machine. Helvig stood outside, watching closely. His eyes did not blink. His lips moved only to whisper to himself, "Break her." But she was not going to break. Through the pain, she reached deep inside herself. Past the fear they had given her, past the memories of chains and needles, she found something deeper, something pure, a darkness that was hers alone. She grabbed it and pulled. The machine shook. Burst. The glass cracked with a high scream. Alarms blared as sparks flew. Scientists shouted. Guards raised their weapons. But it was too late. The pod exploded outward, shards flying across the room. The machine collapsed in fire and smoke. And at the center of it all, she stood. The chains had melted from her wrists. Her eyes glowed with something that was not human. The guards froze, their weapons shaking. Scientists backed away, pale as ghosts. She stepped forward slowly, each movement heavy with power. Her voice was calm, steady, but filled with something that made the air grow colder. "You cannot break me. You never could." One guard screamed and fired his weapon. The bullet never reached her. It stopped midair, hanging before her eyes, then dropped harmlessly to the floor. She raised her hand, and the guard was lifted from the ground, clawing at his throat, his own terror choking him. He fell silent in seconds. The room went still. Dr. Halvik did not move. His eyes locked on hers. His mask finally shattered. She could feel the storm of fear inside him, thick and desperate. For the first time, he could not hide it. "You are not supposed to exist," he whispered. She took one step closer. "I am what you made me," she said. "And I am your God now." No one spoke. No one moved. The alarms still wailed in the distance, but inside the room, there was only silence. Then she turned her head slowly toward the door. Beyond it, she could feel hundreds of mines guards, scientists, Assistant Saul, waiting, all trembling. Their fear called to her like a song. Her chains were gone. Her cell was gone. There was nothing left to hold her anymore. And for the first time since her capture, she felt free. The alarms kept screaming as she stepped out of her ruined cell. The hallway outside glowed red with warning lights. Guards shouted orders, their boots striking the floor like drums. Scientists ran in every direction, clutching their files, their eyes wide with panic, and she could feel it all. Every fear, every heartbeat, every desperate thought, flowed into her, stronger than ever before. The building was alive with terror, and she was at the center, feeding on it. Two guards rushed toward her, rifles raised. "Stop where you are," one of them yelled. They shook. She tilted her head, her eyes burning, and the rifles trembled in their hands. "Drop them." Both weapons. Both weapons clattered to the floor, as if pulled by invisible strings. The guards tried to turn and run, but their bodies froze in place. Their breaths quickened, their eyes bulged as she reached into their minds. She showed them their worst fears' darkness, swallowing them whole. Shadows crawling up their skin, voices whispering from the void. They screamed until their throats broke, then collapsed in silence. Others saw this and hesitated. No one wanted to step closer. They whispered her number, Subject 9, as if it was a curse. But she was no longer a number. She walked forward slowly, and with each step the crowd moved back. Somewhere above, Dr. Halvik watched through the cameras. His voice came through. The speakers, sharp and commanding. "All units contain the specimen. Do not let her reach the upper levels. Use lethal force if necessary." She raised her head and looked straight into the nearest camera. She could feel him watching, feel the cold fear he tried to hide. "I am not your specimen," she whispered. "I am your fear." The screen above her flickered and went black. She continued down the corridor. A group of guards tried to form a barrier at the end. Their hands shook on their rifles, but still they aimed. One of them shouted, "Fire!" Bullets filled the air, but none touched her. Each one slowed, spun, and dropped to the floor like rain. The guards froze in shock, their mouths open, unable to understand. She raised her hand and the hallway lights burst, plunging them into darkness. Their screams echoed as they fired, blindly into the void. When the lights flickered back on, the hallway was empty except for her. The guards were gone, their weapons scattered, her fear absorbed into her like breath into lungs. She reached the elevator at the end of the hall. With a thought, the doors slid open. The lift carried her upward, its walls shaking as if the machine itself feared her. She closed her eyes, spreading her mind further. She touched the control room where Halvik stood, his face pale under the flashing lights. Scientists around him shouted, but he stayed silent, staring at the monitors. She could taste his fear again, sharper now, no longer hidden. She whispered into his mind, her voice echoing inside his thoughts. "I am coming for you." Halvik's jaw tightened. For the first time, he stepped back from the screens. The elevator. Doors opened onto another level. Rows of cages lined the hall, filled with other test subjects, some human, some not. They were weak, broken, their eyes hollow from years of torment. When they saw her, some gasped, some wept, some reached weak. Hands toward her, she stopped. For the first time, she felt something different in the air, not fear, but hope. The guards stationed here rushed forward, shouting for her to get back. But the prisoners inside their cages pressed closer, eyes locked on her as if they recognized something powerful, something unstoppable. She turned her gaze to the guards. "Open the doors," she said. They shook their heads, their fear rising. She stepped closer, her voice deeper now. "Open them." Keys rattled, chains fell. One by one, the cages opened. The prisoners stumbled out, weak but free. Some fell to the floor in tears. Others whispered words of thanks. A few simply stared at her in awe, as if she were already more than human. The guards who disobeyed dropped to their knees, clutching, their heads, their screams filling the corridor until silence swallowed them. The subjects gathered around her, though none dared too close. She looked at them with calm eyes. "They tried to break me," she said softly, "but they only made me stronger, and now they will fear all of us." The prisoners nodded, their hope mixing with their terror. They followed her as she continued. Down the hall above, Halvik watched in horror as his perfect control collapsed. The cameras showed prisoners escaping, guards falling, lights failing. The facility that had once been unshakable was now crumbling into chaos. One scientist whispered, "We have to evacuate. Can't stop her." But Halvik clenched his fists. His voice shook with anger and fear as he spoke. "No, she is mine. I will not run from what I created." In the halls below, she raised her hand, and the doors to the next level shattered open. Her steps echoed like thunder, her shadow stretching long on the walls. She was no longer Subject 9. She was the god of fear, and nothing would stop her. The halls of the facility burned with chaos. Sirens wailed from every direction. Guards shouted orders, no one followed. Prisoners stumbled through broken doors, some screaming, some laughing, some too weak to even walk. The place that had once been a cage of control was now nothing more than a nest of fear. And she was the center of it all. Every step she took sent waves of terror through the people around her. Some fell to their knees. Some dropped their weapons without being asked. Others simply ran, their screams echoing down the steel corridors. The prisoners who followed her looked at her like she was more than human. To them, she was not just a girl who had survived. She was something beyond survival, something they could not name. Some whispered angel, others whispered monster, but one word repeated more than the rest. God. She said nothing. To them, she did not need to. Her presence was enough. But above, in the control room, Dr. Halvik watched with eyes that burned. The facility's cameras showed him everything. Doors ripped open, guards defeated, scientists running. His hands gripped the table until his knuckles turned white. "This is not the end," he said through clenched teeth. "She thinks she is free, but she is not beyond control. Not yet." The other scientists begged him to evacuate. "We cannot stop her," one cried. "If we stay, we die." Halvik turned his cold eyes toward them. "Then die. But I will finish what I started." entered a locked chamber at the back of the control room. Inside was a machine unlike the others. It was not built to test or measure, it was built to destroy. A last weapon against the subject if she ever escaped. He pressed his palm against the scanner. The machine came alive, humming with deep, heavy power. A voice spoke from the speakers. Final protocol armed. Target Subject 9. Helvik whispered to himself, "If I cannot control you, then I will erase you." Below, she and her followers reached another level of the facility. The cages were different. The prisoners were not human at all. Their shapes twisted, their eyes glowing in strange colors, their bodies experiments gone wrong. Some hissed as the doors burst open. Some staggered out like broken animals. But even they looked at her with fear and respect. She raised her hands slowly, and they stopped. Their strange eyes followed her every move. She could feel them trembling, but also waiting, as if they too recognized her as something greater. "You are free now," she said softly. The creatures gave no answer, only lowered their heads and let her pass. The group grew larger as she moved forward. Broken humans, twisted. Experiments, shadows of what once were, people lost following her through the fire and smoke. The facility had created monsters, and now the monsters had found their god. But then the lights changed. The sirens stopped. A voice filled the halls, sharp and metallic. "Subject 9. This is Dr. Halvik. You have gone far enough. You believe you are free, but you are still inside my walls. And inside my walls, I am God." The prisoners around her froze. Some clutched their heads. The lights above flickered with a pulse that seemed to strike directly into their skulls. The walls shook as the sound of heavy machinery roared awake. She felt the pressure immediately, a weight pressing on her chest, on her mind, stronger than before. The facility itself was changing around her, turning into a weapon. Halvik had activated the final protocol. From the ceiling, panels opened. Metal arms stretched downward, releasing waves of sound and energy. Prisoners screamed and fell to the floor. Some clawed at their ears, others convulsed. The creatures wailed, their bodies shaking violently. The followers she had freed were breaking, but she stood still. The pressure tore at her, tried to crush her mind, tried to force her to her knees. She clenched her fists, her teeth grinding, her breath sharp. "You cannot break me," she whispered, her voice cut through the sound like a blade. The lights exploded above her head. The machine sparked and cracked, metal arms snapping one by one. The prisoners gasped as the pressure lifted. She raised both hands now, and the walls themselves groaned. Pipes burst, steam hissed, and the floor trembled. The facility shuddered as if it were alivened, terrified. High above, in the control room, Halvik staggered. "Impossible," he whispered. His machine was failing. The weapon he had built to erase her was collapsing under her will. She closed her eyes, reaching out through the walls, through the cameras, through the machines themselves until she found him. Halvik. She felt his heartbeat, quick and frantic. She felt his breath catch as she touched his mind. She pushed past the steel barrier he had built around his thoughts. This time it cracked, wide open. And she saw him. Not the cold doctor, not the calm voice of command, but the man behind it, all alone, desperate, drowning in the fear he had hidden for so long. Her voice echoed inside his skull. "You are not God here. I am," Halvik screamed, clutching his head, his knees hitting the floor. Round him, the other scientists backed away, horrified. In the halls below, the prisoners rose again, their fear replaced by awe. The facility shook with every step she took. She was no longer just escaping. She was conquering, and Halvik knew, for the first time, that he had already lost. The walls of the facility trembled like an animal in pain. Sparks dripped from broken wires, alarms screamed and died, lights flickered in and out. The air carried smoke and the sharp smell of burning metal. But through the chaos, she walked forward, calm and steady. Behind her, the prisoners followed in silence. No chains, no cages, no guards. They moved like shadows in her wake, their eyes fixed on her, their steps heavy with awe. She did not need To command them, her presence alone pulled them forward. Every door that blocked her path opened with a thought. Every camera that tried to watch her shattered into sparks. The facility itself bent before her like a bow before its master, and high above in the control room, Dr. Halvik prepared himself. He stood alone now. The other scientists had fled. The guards had abandoned their posts. Only he remained, staring into the broken screens. His face was pale, his eyes hollow, but his hands were steady. In his coat pocket, he carried a small black device, his last plan. "She thinks she has one," he whispered, "but she still bleeds. She still breathes. She is not a god. She is only a girl." The door behind him exploded. Smoke curled through the opening, and then she stepped inside. For the first time, Halvik saw her without glass between them, without chains, without machines. She stood tall, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light, her shadow stretching across the floor. The prisoners stopped. At the doorway, waiting, none dared to enter. This was not their fight, which hers. Halvik forced himself to look her in the eye. His voice was steady, though his chest tightened with every breath. "So this is what you've become," he said. "A monster leading monsters." She tilted her head. "I am what you made me." I made a subject, Halvik snapped. "Ah. Weapon to serve. Not this. Not." His words faltered as her eyes burned brighter. She stepped closer. The floor vibrated beneath her feet. "You wanted a weapon? You got a god." Halvik's hand tightened around the black device in his pocket. "No, I will not bow to you." He pulled it out, raising it between them. Small trigger with a red light. His thumb rested on it, shaking slightly. "You see this?" he said. "One press, and the failsafe detonates. Entire facility will collapse. Every prisoner, every experiment, every trace of you buried in fire and rubble." The prisoners gasped from the doorway. Some cried out in fear. The walls themselves seemed to groan at his words, but she did not flinch. "You would kill yourself," she said. Halvik's lips twitched. "If that is the price, yes." She closed her eyes and reached into his mind. His fear burned there like fire under ice. She showed him what she saw: his body buried under stone, his bones lost in darkness, his name forgotten, his breath caught. His thumb trembled over the button. "You do not want to die," she whispered. "You never did. You hid it under control, under commands, under lies. But inside, you are afraid of the dark." Halvik staggered back, pressing his free hand against the wall. The device shook in his grip. "Stop," he whispered. She stepped closer, her voice sharp as a blade. "You wanted to break me. You wanted to erase me. But now you will kneel." Halvik's knees trembled. His eyes widened as shadows crawled up the walls, swallowing the light. He felt them touch his skin, cold and endless, whispering his name. His breath came in short gasps. "Please," he whispered, before he could stop himself. The device slipped from his hand. It hit the floor and rolled, the red light blinking faintly. Silence filled the room. She looked down at him, her eyes calm. "Now you understand. I am not your subject. I am your fear." Halvik collapsed to his knees, his hands shaking, his eyes full of terror. Tried to look away, but he couldn't. Her presence pinned him like chains. The prisoners at the doorway saw it. Guards who had not fled saw it. Even the broken facility seemed to feel it. The man who once ruled the cages, who gave orders that shaped nightmares, now bowed before the very thing he had tried to destroy, and she knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning. She turned, her gaze away from Halvik, toward the world beyond the walls. She could feel it waiting, the cities, the people, millions of minds, untouched by her power. All of them carried fear. All of them would hear her name. The facility had fallen. Halvik had fallen. The god of fear was ready to step into the world. The facility was silent now. The alarms were dead. Machines lay in ruins. Smoke drifted through the broken halls like ghosts. The cages were empty, their prisoners gone. Only the shadows remained, the fear. She walked through it all, calm and steady, the chains of her past broken at her feet. Behind her followed those she had freed: humans, twisted creatures, shattered souls. They limped, crawled, or stumbled. After her, bound together by one thing, the terror that no longer controlled them. They were no longer subjects. They were her people. Dr. Halvik stayed behind in the control room, kneeling in silence. His eyes were empty, his will shattered. He did not follow her. He could not. His fear had eaten him whole. She did not look back. The great doors at the top of the facility waited for her. They were thick steel, impossible for normal hands to move. For years they had been the wall between her prison and the outside world. She raised her hand. The metal screamed as it bent, cracked, and tore apart. Light, true light, not the pale glow of machines, poured through the opening. The air was fresh, carrying scents she had almost forgotten: earth, wind, life. For the first time since her capture. She stepped outside. The night sky stretched above her, filled with stars. The world beyond the walls was vast and endless. Her followers stumbled out behind her, shielding their eyes, weeping as they touched the ground. Some fell to their knees, kissing the soil. Others cried with joy. But she only looked at the stars. Her eyes glowed faintly as she whispered, "This world will know me." Far away, in cities untouched by the facility, people felt a shiver run down their spines. Soldiers on watchtowers looked over their shoulders. Children woke from dreams they could not explain. Ordinary men and women paused in their work, sensing something dark just beyond their reach. The world did not yet know her name, but it already felt her shadow. Her followers gathered around her. They looked to her not with fear, but with awe. Some whispered prayers. Others bowed their heads. One voice broke through the silence. "What do we do now?" She turned slowly, her eyes sweeping across them. They were broken, scarred, half ruined by the experiments that had chained them. But she saw more. She saw strength, hunger, and the fire of survival. "You are free," she said softly. "But freedom is not enough. The ones who did this to us, they are not gone. The world beyond these walls is full of them, and they will fear us just as these walls feared me." A murmur rose through the crowd: fear, excitement, hope. One of the prisoners, his face pale and thin, asked, "Are you going to fight them?" She looked back at the burning facility, the broken tower glowing against the night. Her voice was calm but heavy like thunder. "I will not fight them." Confusion spread through the group. She raised her head toward the sky, her eyes burning. "I will rule them through their fear." Silence followed. Then slowly, heads began to nod. They did not fully understand, but they believed, because belief was no longer a choice. Her presence demanded it. The night was quiet, but in the distance, sirens wailed. The outside world had noticed. Vehicles rolled toward the smoking facility. Soldiers prepared their weapons. Lights cut across. The dark her followers trembled, some stepping back. But she did not move. She stood tall, her shadow stretching across the earth. "They are coming," one whispered. She smiled. "Let them." When the first soldiers arrived, their trucks roaring, their spotlights shining, they froze at the sight. A figure stood in the smoke, surrounded by freed prisoners and impossible creatures. She looked small from a distance, but the air itself shook around her. The soldiers raised their weapons, but none fired. Their fingers trembled, their eyes wide, fear gripped. Then, before a word was spoken, she stepped forward into the light. In their minds, she planted the same truth. "You cannot stop me. You will never stop me. I am your fear." The soldiers fell back, their weapons clattering to the ground. Some fled, some fell to their knees. None dared to stand against her. And as the world's eyes turned toward the burning facility, as cameras captured the smoke and whispers spread like fire, one thing became certain: the god of fear had left her cage, and the world would never be the same again.